Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second segment of our fishing reports. Before we get into it, I just want to make a couple of announcements. So we do have the Crazy Horse Fishing Hours season going full blast right now. Coming up, we're going to have Kevin Conroy next week with Humminbird. We're going to have Briar Landon with Landon Marine the following week. So stay tuned for those, especially if you have a boat and you want to know about side imaging and some preventive maintenance you can do to your boat during just about any season so you can keep it running. And also Scott Lennox is going to be with us, which I'm really excited about that as well. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Captain Walleye Pete, who really doesn't need any introduction. But
Good evening.
Good evening. So we're going to discuss the Mid-Chesapeake Bay fishing report.
Alrighty.
So we're going to go into. Oops, sorry, I'm getting a little thing here. Okay, sorry about that, folks.
There you
so
go.
We're going to go into our 2-minute bite, where we do a really quick rundown of what's biting, which we know what that is in the Chesapeake Bay. What tackle using? If you're using any of Steve Vogel's rods.
Well, hey, I've been using Fogel's rods. We had some giant fish 2 days ago on a flat, calm, beautiful. It felt like May or October on a nice day, but his rod was doubled over with a mid-plus 40s fish. And my video on my Facebook page, I was saying, man, I hope that Fogel stick doesn't break. But yes. I like to tease Steve a little bit. So
that
anyway,
was a nice rod that gentleman was using, and yeah. Great catch to boot. So
yeah, that was a great fish. What's going on out there? The bite, we're using BKDs. Skirted jigs are really good. I'm using some giant metal too to drop down, but mainly it's BKDs. GI jig heads work awfully good. They're so pretty that I have a hard time not chewing on them when I see them swinging in front of me. But anyway, they're some great stuff along with skirts on them. And, 2 ounces, 1.5 ounces, when it's really calm. I mean, you can get it down 50 feet if you need to real quick. But the fish were mainly in 40 to 45 feet, and they were up through the water column. 2 days ago, it's February, and we had them boiling on top. They actually boiled on top. That was, I've been doing this a long time here out of the same area, and I've seen them like that before, but it's been a long time since I saw that. And when that happens, it's throw a BKD out there. Don't even let it get down much. Just start working aggressive and erratic. And oh my God, they're going to start screaming, dragging, and trying to break Fogel sticks, which they have not done it yet. so that's what's going on.
That's awesome. Yeah. If you haven't done so already, go to the Four Seasons Guide Service and Tackle to watch those amazing videos that Captain Pete is talking about. But let's get deeper into the fishing report. Tell us about what you use. Obviously, we've mentioned BKDs. Side imaging. I really appreciate that you post the side imaging because I learn a lot.
Yeah.
You mentioned birds. What else can you share with us about getting on not just the striped bass, but also speckled trout?
Well, over the last many years, we've gotten specks in a warm water discharge. Typically they show up in November, you get them in December, sometimes January, and all of a sudden we still catching a few in February. It's not like you can go there and catch a lot. If you traveled 200 miles to go catch specks, you probably will not catch one. But what's going on is they're there a little bit and you snag them as much as you hook them. See, here's what I think based on history and just trying to tie it together in my brain why these specks are there. Well, they show up in November, December, the water's getting cold, and that warm water discharge is just a little warmer. It's not a lot warmer, but it's a little warmer. And by January, that water typically in that discharge can get into the low 40s and even below 40 and even in the 30s because it's only coming out of the holes 6 degrees warmer. So if it's 33-degree water, if we're having a cold winter, it's not even showing 40 in that flow. So that's not hot water, and those specks die or they get caught out. I think they die, and some get caught. Most folks don't keep them. Some do, and that's fine. It's all good. But this year, the water isn't cold. The water in the main stem of the bay today was 44.7 degrees, give or take a couple tenths here and there. So in the main stem of the bay, 44 something equals, the warm water discharge is there a bit warmer. That could be almost 50. So those specks aren't dead. There's a few. It's not that many, but we're ticking the bottom and just working those short, sharp twitches with a 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce GI jig head with a 6-inch BKD. And, we catch stripers, we catch specks doing that. And then the cool thing is the main stem of the bay bite that we don't typically have this time of year, but we do. Here's what I think's happening. Based on this year and past years, when I look back at my journal entries, when it's really cold, when in the middle of the winter, when we get a couple flat days, or even now lately, one flat day and sun, the surface temperature warms up. And I am not a scientist, and I could be blowing smoke out my what, but I believe that when it's sunny and it's flat, the microorganisms might come up in the water column. And again, I'm no scientist. And those microorganisms are getting ate by other organisms. And before you know it, the food chain is coming up in the water column. And then those little birdies can start seeing them. So 2 days ago, and then many other days this winter, on really nice days, oh my God, the birds show the way. And that's a good thing. To find them without the birds, you got to cover a lot of ground and really work hard for it to find them in the open water. Steve Griffin found them today a little bit. I mean, I don't know how much of a bit, but I know he found some. So hats off to him for covering all that ground and seeing, he saw some clues, and that's what I do out there. We're always looking for clues. There was a few birds sitting on the water for him today. And I've had the same exact thing happen. And there's several guides that know the exact game, and they work really hard. There's a lot of good guides out there. And we work in this hard Chesapeake Bay, and, it works. So we look for clues out there. But on those flat days, the life just seems to come up. And when those birds show the way, it is game on. And we must have caught 4 hours straight, and we had many, many, many over 40s. So that's how good that was. It was good stuff. And most fish are nice. And that's all on the plastics, the BKDs. And also I've been throwing a giant metal, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's big. It's like a foot long. It's a big metal, and I can't remember the name of it. Grant might know. I can't think of it. It's a gigantic spoon though, and they use them in the ocean. But putting that straight down and then working it up, it's incredible. So, and it falls down. It just flutters down like an injured menhaden. And hey, that's what the deal is with that.
Wow. So for a metal that big, what kind of rod are you using? What kind of leader?
Well, I'll go with a no less than a medium heavy stick. Steve's medium heavy 6'8" is great for that. And I've even got some bigger sticks. I don't even know what the numbers are on the sticks, but they're a little bigger that Steve made also, that I was using in the Gulf of Mexico jigging for amberjack. But those work good with those big metals too. And we're using just a 30-pound leader. You don't need real heavy leader. 20 is too light. 25 is borderline. What happens with 20, when somebody gets a fish up high in the water column near the surface, if somebody grabs that leader at all and doesn't move with the head of the fish, they snap it off too easy. So that can happen way, way, way too easy. 30 is better. You still got to be careful with 30, but it's better than 20. So I go at a minimum of 30-pound leader, and I use 15 Fireline or 14 Fireline or 15 Power Pro. I don't need any thicker than that. I like skinny line. I don't like 10 though. It's a little too skinny.
Thank you for that tip. Before we get into questions, just a question from me. So we've had unseasonably warm weather. I mean, one day it almost hit 70.
Today it almost did, didn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it did. It did.
But it wasn't sunny.
That's true. Yeah, it was overcast. It was rainy. People were catching fish today.
Yeah, we caught fish today, but that open water gig was not on fire.
Yeah, but we're going to get a winter snap.
Yes.
Coming up.
Yeah.
There's snow, and it's going to drop down into the teens. Can you explain to, a lot of people who watch our show, they're not familiar with the bay. They may not even be familiar with fishing. What do you anticipate with this winter snap that's going to come? How's that going to impact fishing here in the bay?
Well, the open water bite will probably be a done deal for a bit. Although, guys that go out and run those boats on the channel edges, I was out looking for them today, and we were in the channel. I looked at deep structure. Fish will, they'll go from this warm water up high in the water column, maybe birds showing the way thing, to into the channels, into the deeper water, 60 to deeper, 100 feet, and they'll be suspended out there. And if they're feeding, they'll feed on bait down low. The birds don't show the way, so it's very difficult to find them in that situation. Channel markers out in the channel. They're usually, those channel markers are around very steep, good structure areas. So sometimes off those ledges, off those channel markers, could be fish. But it's a difficult gig. If it's a nice day and the water's dropped down a lot in temperature, you can go out and look for them. And then, obviously there's power plants around and they put out a little bit of warm water, but it's hit or miss. You can't bank on it every time you go to those spots. So, if you had to go to somewhere to catch a fish, the power plant's a good place. But you could also go there and catch a skunk. Yes. So it's a difficult gig at best there.
For sure. It's a good time to quit your job. I mean, I was stuck in an office,
yeah.
So I haven't been able to fish. So let's go to questions. Let's see who we got first. Oh, all right. Carl Ward. How you doing, Carl?
Oh, Carl.
What you think of the flutter spoons, Pete?
Well, Carl, the flutter spoon, I think, is that big lure that I was using. Yep. But it's I can't think of the brand name of it though. I might have one in the basement. Hey, honey, yep. Go grab that giant flutter spoon on the tackle table. I'll have my wife go get it. But I think the flutter spoons work great as long as, like, say if it's 40, the fish are 40 feet down or so, 40, 50 feet down. If that spoon sinks, if it flutters and barely goes down, it's kind of tough to put it to the fish. But these spoons I was using get down pretty quick. I also use diamond jigs in that case and heavy jigs. Yeah. But I like those flutter spoons, man. If there's big fish around and they're eating menhaden, they can't say no to those flutter spoons, so I like them.
For sure. Yeah, I love using metal too. All right. So next question, who do we have, Grant?
Oh, GI jig heads. So yeah, that's right. Lonnie is now making big flutter spoons. So I'm going to get a hold of his and use some of those. And the ones I have on the boat right now are a Ben Parker spoon. That's what they are. Yeah, it's a Ben Parker spoon. But you know what? Those great big, Lonnie knows what happened. Lonnie can make good stuff. But this is a flutter. It's big. I mean, yeah, it's big. But you know what? When you open the mouth of a 45-inch striper, he could put 5-10 of these in his mouth. I mean, it's unbelievable. So yeah, those GI jig head flutter spoons and these guys right now, they can work well. And I know that Lonnie's sink, I was talking to him about those, and they do sink well. So he can get them down in 50, 60 feet, and they don't just go down like whoops, this way. They don't go down like this. They sink quicker. So they do get down so you can get to the fish. My problem, and I get incredibly excited when I'm in 40, 50, 60 feet and there's fish near the bottom. I want whatever I'm using, it's got to get down now. So diamond jigs, a 4-ounce diamond jig gets down now. A 2-ounce GI jig head with a 6-inch or a 10-inch plastic, they get down quick too. It's all good, but getting that bait down is important. That's for sure.
For sure. Cameron Priest, how you doing? Question for Captain Pete. Can you elaborate on the effects of wind on fish? It seems to me that some days winds shut them down, but that's not always the case. Do you agree, and why?
Damn, Cameron Priest, I almost feel like a politician having to answer a long question. Keep it up there so I can see it. But anyway,
the prize.
Cameron, different times of the year is different. So I'll tell you about what I think. This time of the year, I do not like wind. I don't know if it shuts the fish down, but it makes everything harder to find. So when it's choppy in the winter, birds aren't out finding them. So, you can't use the birds. I mean, the birds, I hate to admit it, but they're way smarter than any of us are. And, they get on those fish. But when it's windy this time of year, rarely do we see birds working when the water's cold, even though it's 44. That's cold. But so in the winter, this time of year, I think it's a big effect. Now, a lot of my fishing is shallow water. So, Cameron, if you're with me in October and we're fishing Hooper's Island on the bay side of Hooper's and the wind is blowing easterly, it could blow 25 and we're going to go catch fish in there because I'm going to fish protected water and it's not going to mud it up. But say you come back to that same zone we just caught in the next day and the wind is blowing westerly, it's going to be muddy and it's going to make mud in that shallow water and you won't catch a fish there. So it affects that. And then in the summer, it's to a lesser degree. Birds will still work in a chop. I don't like being out there in a chop. And I saw your boat the other day, and I don't think you're going to want to be out there in a chop either. But the birds and everything seems to have a harder time finding fish. If you're out there and you locate, and then it gets windy, those fish are still going to bite in the wind. It's just a matter of finding them in the wind. In my structure fishing, the wind doesn't affect me because I go find structure in protected water. So anyway, that's as best I can describe that.
Yeah, well, maybe it's then time to do some freshwater fishing in a kayak in some nice protected river, stream, or lake. It's always great fish in there. Dam River boys, what do you think about reaction tackle braids?
I'm trying to think about what that is. Reaction tackle braids. I'm guessing is that some sort of braided line?
Yeah, can you elaborate?
I love braided line.
Yeah.
I love braided line, but I'm not familiar with that term. Reaction tackle braids. If reaction tackle is a maker of braid, I haven't used it.
Okay.
But reaction tackle braids.
All right.
Okay, it's braided fishing. I can't comment because I don't know. I would try it, but I haven't used it. I like braid that my 30-pound leader ties to real nice, and I use Fireline and Power Pro, but I don't have to. I would use anything if I got my hands on it. I would try it out, but I can't answer. I don't know.
All right. So, Alan Meadows, when you are fishing in your favorite areas, will you leave the fish to find fish to prevent overfishing your spots? That's a good question.
Alan, that's a really good question. Now, skinny water spots, typically you're forced to leave unless you like to catch nothing. In shallow water where I fish, I have a lot of go-to spots. I've got thousands of them. So when I go to a stump field that's got fish, typically in shallow water, I'm going to be a decent cast away from that. And I'm going to say I got 3 or 4 guys casting. I'm going to tell them before I get to the zone, okay, I want you casting there, 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 and there. And we're going to work that zone. I'm going to say where the stumps are. And the cast past the stumps, work it over. Well, anyway, if a guy hooks a fish, a whole bunch, if there's 100 fish there, and there's only 4 guys fishing, we're not ever going to catch 100 fish. We're going to catch 5 or 6 or 10, maybe. 10 would be a lot. Here's what happens. I've seen it with my own eyes in gin clear water. When we're fishing emerald green, I can't see it, but in gin clear I have, so I know what the fish do. I've watched them with my own eyes. You hook a fish, and there'll be 30 fish following the one you got hooked, and he follows it all the way to the boat, and then they scatter. So guess what? They don't go back to the structure. They have scattered. So now there's 30 fish out of the mix. And then another guy brings one in and some more scatter. So unless there is an abnormally amount of a gigantic number of fish on a structure, you'll only catch a few. And what I do is I catch a few and typically leave. I mean, if I'm catching really nice fish, I'll stay there a bit, but usually I have to leave because they're going to quit. Now in the main stem of the bay, there's no hole. There's a school of fish. Say you're on breakers. Well, I'm going to probably fish breakers for a bit. If they're small, I'm absolutely going to move. If we've had enough, I'm absolutely going to move. A lot of that depends on my clients. But in the shallows, the fish lead the way, and I do leave fish to find fish. If they're small, if we catch 5 little fish, I leave. I don't care how many are there. So that's the answer to that.
All right. Great question.
Really good question.
So we have time for maybe 2, maybe 3 more questions. Robert Figliosi, one of our sponsors, and unfortunately our sponsors aren't eligible for question of the evening. What long-term effect do you think this mild winter will have on the 2023 season? Wondering if the lack of cold temperatures, to kill off certain plant life, but will happen now maybe as the cleansing process.
Well, the last part of that is well beyond my pay grade. What I do every year is I go out there and look for where the grass is growing. It seems to grow in different areas often. Sometimes similar areas, but sometimes more, sometimes less. And I'm not sure what this warm condition will do. I don't know. I won't know until I go. When somebody calls me one day and says, are they biting? Well, I don't know. You won't know unless you go. What long-term effects do you think this mild winter will have on the 23 season? Well, I like an early spring. I'm hoping for some global warming. I'd like to see redfish and specks up here way early because I'm going to be fishing for specks in April. And I hope there's a lot of them. Usually I have to work really hard to catch a speck in April. But if it's warm, if the water's in the 50s in early April, there is a strong chance to catch specks in early April in shallow water. So long term, I don't know what it does long term. Rob, you'll have to call CCA.
Yeah.
Those guys will know.
Well, DNR are full of scientists
Yep.
as well. They're a good resource for those kinds of
Yep.
questions as well.
Yep.
Let's see. All right. So D-Train, how you doing, D-Train? Is it better to fish with metal or plastic during the cold months?
That's a good question.
Earlier, but it is a good question. Yeah.
Is it better to fish with metal? No. Yes. No. Is it better to fish with plastic? Yeah. No. Sometimes it depends on the angler, and sometimes it depends on where the fish are in the water column, and sometimes it depends on if the fish are really hot. When I say hot, are they actively really feeding? So that can go either way, man. I'll give an example of when I love metal. I love metal when I'm in 40, 50 feet of water off the channel on a hard bottom and the fish are belly down on the bottom. When they're belly down on the bottom, it seems like that metal just wakes them up or it makes them react. Or it's like a dog, when you throw a toy right next to them and move it, they just jump and they go after it. I think I like metal for that. And also when I'm marking fish, say I'm only marking a few fish, I got to get it down to them right now.
Yeah.
Got to do it now, not tomorrow. I tell guys on my boat, hey, man, get it down now, not tomorrow, because we're on those fish right now, and we're going to be off them. If there's a bunch of fish, then there ain't nothing better than throwing a GI jig head with a skirted jig out there, 40, 50 feet of water, let it get down to the bottom, and then start working short, sharp twitches on that bottom. But the metal on the bottom when they're belly down and there's not too many fish is a great technique. And then, I love skirted plastics and BKDs and jig heads. I love them on suspended fish in deep water. It's 100 feet deep, but the fish are 40, 50. Fig that was just asking a question caught a 49-ish incher, on suspended fish. I think I put those. I've got those screenshots up on my Facebook page. But anyway, it's really cool. So there's different situations. That's a good question, D-Train. I like that. But it goes both ways, man. It depends on the situation.
For sure. I think we're out of time, actually, because we do have to go into our next fishing report really soon. So thank you, everyone, for your questions. Oh, my gosh, there were so many more. Yeah.
Can't go longer. This went by too quick. This goes by like 2 seconds.
It does. So much more to talk about. So who do you choose for the winner of the prize tonight, Captain Pete?
Yeah. I'm not going to declare I'm really old, but my memory sucks. There was one that I said several times. I liked it a lot. Which one was that?
Yeah. I think it was, let's see here. Not the flutter spoons.
I remember where I caught fish 10 years ago, but I don't remember.
Thank you, Grant. Yeah, Alan's question.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, that's the one right there. Yeah.
Right on, Alan.
Yeah, great question. Super great question. So, yeah.
It is. Everyone had a great question. But Alan, when you get a chance, I don't think you've won a prize before. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it when we get new winners.
Yeah.
So make sure that you send us an email with your address to admin@thefishingchannel.net. Please do so. So many prizes go unclaimed because people don't follow up with us. So please make sure that you do. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Captain Walleye Pete, always a pleasure, a wealth of knowledge. Didn't even get to talk about seminars, but how people get a hold of you really quick before we sign off. And
they can go to my Facebook page and see my phone number and text me or call me. Okay, it's all good. But anyway, let's go catch some fish.
Right on.
All right.
Well, stay tuned for our next fishing report where we go down to Georgia with Captain Massa, and I'll see
you
in a few seconds. Fish on, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.